welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Leighanne and I talk about books. Welcome to today's video, which is another edition of the King Chronicles. Today we'll be discussing Rage, if you didn't look at the thumbnail or read the title. I would say this is probably one of King's lesser known works, and there are a couple reasons for that. We'll kind of talk about that once we start talking about fun facts. Once again, let me just go over this review / discussion will be full of spoilers, so if you have not read the book and don't want to be spoiled, don't watch this video. Another disclaimer, I'm not the authority on Stephen King in any way, shape, or form. These are just my thoughts and my interpretations of the book. As always, I welcome discussion down in the comments below. And if you want to know a little bit more about my process of reading these books, I will link the introduction video up above for you to watch at your leisure if this is your first time seeing one of these videos. So, now I did say this was Rage by Stephen King. However, this was his first book that was published under his pseudonym Richard Bachman, and I do not have a single edition of Rage because it is currently out of print, which I'll discuss in a minute. So I do have my bind up over here of the Bachman books, which includes Rage, The Long Walk, Road Work, and The Running Man, as well as a preface why it was Bachman. As of right now, you can only get Rage if you get your hands on one of these. There are also some paperback bind-ups that have it in there as well. And then I have my little Stephen King bookmark over here. You can find those on the A Stranger Dream Etsy shop. I will link that down below as well. So, okay, let's just jump right into general information about this book. Publication date on this was in September of 1977. This isn't traditional horror. It's more along the psychological horror, maybe like psychological thriller aspect. It did take me a decent little bit to work my way through this book, even though it is fairly short. I just wasn't grabbed by it, to be completely honest, and subsequently I ended up rating it only 3 stars. Now, only 3 stars doesn't mean it's bad. I liked it, I just didn't feel like it was one of his strongest. So, some fun facts about this book. As I previously said, this was his first book that was published under the name Richard Bachman, and we already discussed how it is bound up. So that's that right there. I did find the preface, Why Was Bachman, pretty interesting for a couple of different reasons. It was just really interesting to see what his mindset was as far as, you know, why he chose to create the pseudonym and why he chose to publish those certain books under this pseudonym. But of course, one of the reasons that he did choose to publish under a pseudonym is to prevent market saturation, because during this time period he was releasing at least 1 book a year, sometimes 2, and so it was a way for him and his publisher to get more books out, you know, without there being too much out there by him, if that makes sense. So one of the reasons that you can only get this in bind-ups now is because King did make the decision to take this book out of print for a pretty good reason. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the plot of this book, it does take place in a high school setting. You have a student that has taken his class hostage and in the process has actually murdered 2 teachers. And so I believe when this book was originally published, school shootings weren't really a thing. However, as time went on and unfortunately they became more and more common, there was an instance where there was a school shooting. I do not remember the place or date or any of those things, but a bind-up of the Bachman books was found in the student's locker. Now, I don't believe that anybody went on to blame this publication for that, but King was like, no, we're not doing this, and did decide to take that out of publication, so which is a decision that I definitely respect. And actually in 2013 he wrote a essay called Guns and ended up you know, more explaining why he let it go out of print, and I believe that he donated any proceeds that he got from that to a campaign to end gun violence. One of the things that King has said is that the subject matter of this book was very heavily inspired by some of the feelings that he had as a high school student and some of the frustrations and the pains that he experienced. So that was a pretty interesting like little tidbit of information. So, all right, so my thoughts on the book. I'll be honest, I wasn't overly impressed by this book. You know, it's supposed to be a thriller. I didn't exactly find it very thrilling. It didn't have that page turning quality to me that a lot of his other books do. That's just, you know, my own personal feelings on it. One thing that I will say is that, you know, obviously this was his first published work under a pseudonym, and because I have read so much Stephen King, I definitely can see how that voice is very similar, the way that he writes. However, I think that, you know, because it was very early on in his career, there was a distinct difference in between Bachman and King as far as like what that writer's voice really sounded like. So, you know, you have the story itself that's kind of told in flashbacks. You have Charlie, who's the main character. He's the child that has taken the rest of his classroom hostage. They never really give like a super specific reason as to like why he's doing what he's doing, or I don't think that they really did. And there were several different points where I kind of found myself wondering, is Charlie a product of his upbringing? In that, you know, he was bullied, he had a really hard father, he was kind of babied by his mother. Or there are points where he talks about these headaches that he gets, or like how he has a really bad stomach and that kind of thing. It makes you wonder, okay, is he a product of his upbringing, or is there some kind of more serious mental illness happening? And that's never really like fully fleshed out or fully discussed. I don't know if we as readers are meant to kind of interpret that like as we will. I'm not really sure. But in any case, there's really nothing supernatural that's going on in this book whatsoever, which, you know, up until this point, all of the books that we've already discussed have had a supernatural element to them. So again, I think that this was another big difference in between Bachman's writing and King's writing. As the story progresses, Charlie is kind of like sitting in front of his class and he's like, okay, well, why don't you guys start sharing some stories with me? Because he does go on to like share some stories about, you know, himself and some of the experiences that he's had. And so he encourages his classmates to do the same. And it's very interesting because the classroom and the kids kind of devolve into this. It's very difficult to explain, but they kind of devolve and end up sharing secrets with each other that I don't think that under normal circumstances they ever would have actually shared. And Charlie does the same thing as he's sitting in front of the class, you know, like really starts sharing these like horrible things that have happened to him and these horrible experiences that he's had. And the way that everything kind of devolved at the end really kind of made me think of Lord of the Flies. It was very like Lord of the Flies-esque, which was interesting to me. And honestly, the reaction of most of the kids that are taken hostage in the class, like, is very, there really wasn't much reaction. Like, you had moments where they would almost, like, certain students would almost descend into hysteria, but for the most part, it was very just like, oh, okay, this is a thing that's happening. It's fine. Everything's fine. And that was very troubling, and I don't know exactly why it was written that way. Obviously, I don't, because, you know, this is like speculation and interpretation and all that stuff, but I don't know. I guess the way that I kind of felt about it as a whole, like I said, I wasn't overly impressed. I guess at the end of the day, I kind of felt like it was, you know, really just about a bullied kid who had, you know, experienced these shitty things in relation to his parents and his classmates and just, you know, like his overall life. And so, you know, that's kind of why he does what he does, I guess. I don't know. But I didn't love it. I really didn't. And from what I've read, it seems to be either you really, really loved it and you think it's brilliant. I don't think that I've seen anybody hate it, but a lot of people kind of feel the same way that I do from what I read after the fact. It's just not amazing. So some of the themes that we, you know, have throughout the book is the first biggest one is authority, because what does Charlie do? What's the first thing that he does? He immediately ends up killing 2 teachers and then inserts himself as the role of the authority within the classroom, and he really does enjoy going back and forth with some of the teachers and administrators and, you know, even the police that are trying to get him to let all the kids go. And he's really, really enjoying this power that he has over these people. You know, you have a child who's been beaten down by his parents, by teachers, by other children. We do learn that Charlie had been suspended or expelled, I don't remember exactly which one, because of an incident that he had with the teacher, where I think he actually did hit a teacher because of a particular incident. And so that tells you again right there that Charlie has a problem with authority. He has a problem with the authority of his father, and even like the authority of some of the older children as well. So another theme that I kind of picked up on is this theme of secrets, right? I mentioned previously in my thoughts how it was interesting that Charlie sat up there and started sharing these things about himself, you know, these kind of secret things that he's kept hidden and have really weighed on him, and in turn, and then a lot of the other students actually do start talking about, you know, some secrets about themselves or their families or things like that. You know, it's clear from the type of secrets that they're sharing and their reactions as they're sharing the secrets that these are things that are very important to them. They're things that affect them very much. It was interesting seeing that because we also saw in Salem's Lot a couple books ago that secrets played a very big role inside that story and inside that town. So it was once again where we see a lot of common themes within King's work. You know, Charlie kind of, from what I gathered, really kept his secrets to himself, which really resulted in him killing his teachers and losing his shit, you know, rather than sharing them with someone that he trusts. And it's kind of funny because at the very end, after, you know, everything kind of wraps up and, you know, he turns himself in and he's been taken into a psychiatric hospital or a prison, I can't remember exactly which one, but he actually says at the end in a letter that he's writing to a best friend or a former best friend, that he has a secret again and it makes him feel human. So that little bit was interesting to me. And again, it's another one of those things where it also makes me wonder, is he just like absolutely off his rocker, or is this again like a product of his upbringing? And the last theme that I was really able to pick up on was like the bullying and the abuse that takes place in the book. And this is a theme that has literally happened in every single Stephen King book so far that we've discussed. And so I wasn't at all surprised to see that in there. You know, bullying is something that, you know, here in this day and age is a very big deal, and a lot of children deal with it. I dealt with it whenever I was a kid, and, you know, even as an adult we deal with it, and that's the sad part. It's sad that even though I didn't really enjoy the book itself all that much, there's a lot of themes in here that are extremely relevant for it being written in the 60s or 70s, excuse me. And so that is saddening, honestly. It's saddening more than anything. But so we have our cast of characters that are in the classroom, but there's really only two main characters in the whole book. And obviously the first one is Charlie. He's our main character. He is our protagonist. I don't even know that I'd call him a protagonist. I kind of feel like he's an anti-hero, and I kind of feel like he's not. I don't know. He's very, very hard to define for me, to be completely honest. And you know, when we talk about characters, I usually kind of go into a little bit more depth, but I feel like we've kind of discussed, you know, the whole book revolves around him and his feelings and what he does, and I've already discussed that up until this point, and so I don't really feel like I need to go into any more detail. The only other character that I do want to discuss is Ted Decker, who I haven't actually like gone into or specifically said by name up until this point. And Ted Decker is one of his classmates, and he is kind of the classmate that is the foil for Charlie almost. He really is the only person in the classroom that's really outraged or like upset by any of Charlie's actions. You know, the rest of the class is just like, oh, okay, this is fine, and Ted's like, what the hell are you doing? And again, you know, as Charlie shares his secrets, and as the rest of the class shares their secrets, you know, they're like, Ted, would you like to share anything with the class? And of course he doesn't, and ends up losing it in the end. You know, he ends up in a semi-catatonic state, and that was interesting to me. I feel like Ted was the person in the classroom that was most akin to an adult, and so that's kind of why he had the outcome that he did. So now we come to Connections, and this is a book, as I said, it was published in 1977. While this is a book published in 77, I could not find any definitive proof of this, but it is speculated that this was actually the first book that King actually ever wrote. As I previously said, he did base a lot of this off of his own feelings and that kind of thing while he was in high school, so I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. But because of that, there are absolutely no connections that I could find to any of his previously published works, with the exception of, you know, some of the reoccurring themes, which if that's the first one that was actually written, then that's just a theme that carries through everything, and I think that we'll continue to see that as we continue with the series. But so that's all I have for this book. It is one of his shortest, hence why this video is probably a lot shorter than the rest of the ones that we've done up until this point. Like I said, this definitely wasn't my favorite. I don't think that it was a bad book. As of the filming of this, I have read all the way up until the Dead Zone, so obviously I'm really behind on filming these videos, but I have read The Long Walk already, and while I was not as impressed with this as the Bachman book, I did really enjoy The long walk, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that one. So that is all I have for you guys as far as Rage is concerned. Have you read this book? What did you think? Do you agree or disagree with any of the things that I talked about? I would love to hear your thoughts. This seems to be kind of one of those polarizing books in the Stephen King universe, so I am eager to discuss with you guys. As always, links to all of my social media can be found in the down bar below. You can get at me at Goodreads, Twitter, or Instagram. As always, if you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you click thumbs up and hit subscribe if you have not already. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.